Did you ever notice how a team can hit every number on paper and they still feel like it's falling apart underneath?
I stood there on that shore feeling like a woman covered in what I call just. I was just a stay-at-home mom. I was just a stepmom. I was just a wife. I was just a daughter. That day on the shore, I didn't know who I was.
There can be a quiet drain or low morale. People might just be going through the motions, and it's costing more than anyone wants to admit. Now, this is Scale Smart, Grow Fast. And today we're getting into exactly that with someone who fixes it from the inside out. Now, speaking of things running smoothly behind the scenes, that's a big part of why I built Workergenics, a full-time ultimate executive assistance company that keeps executives and business owners consistent so that you're not the one holding everything together by hand. Now, my exciting guest today is Lee Smith. She is the founder of UpCycle Coaching and the creator of the G3 Collective. She built the Candy method, which my youngest son would be super excited by the name, and it helps learning and development leaders shift their inner dialogue that might be driving some team dysfunction so that the results can show up where it really counts in productivity, efficiency, and, of course, the bottom line. Let's get into it. So, Lee, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Adrienne. Happy to be here with you in the audience.
And I love the expertise you're bringing here. And I'm curious, as you get started, as an expert, when you're starting to work with a company, what are some of those first signs that you can spot with your wise eyes that a team might look fine on paper, but everything isn't as great under the hood?
Yes, well, definitely there's an energy in the room or energy, the vibe that's coming off from the team. And I also look at their body language and are they comfortable around each other, or can I sense that they're excited and happy to be working with one another, or is there some distance and they're like, okay, you can tell I'm just going to be professional. I'm here because I need to be here and just going to do my thing and I'm ready to leave the room? Or are they openly communicating and wanting to work with one another? And even when we see introverted and extroverted personalities, there's still a different energy and a body language that comes off of them, whether it's the straight posture, the leaning in, or the really stepping back. You can look at that personal space between the persons and see that difference there, whether they're like, yeah, this team like really enjoys being around one another, or okay, they're here for the status quo, right? And then I want to break that.
And as you kind of list how you're sensing that, what struck me is even if you were meeting with people virtually, like in something like we're doing here, right? Like a Zoom or a Google Meet, you could tell a lot of that even in a virtual meeting.
Definitely, definitely. It's kind of the same thing. Are they leaning in and they're ready to go, or their body is upright? Maybe there's some movement. I talk a lot with my hands, so is there energy and movement there, or are they kind of leaning back a little bit? Or you can see their body positions like everything is compact and they're in. Okay, or the eyes go revert, it's so, yes, definitely. There's different signs that can happen over Zoom as well. Though most of my work has been in person.
Love that. Now, thank you for that. That helps as I'm sure for myself and the other listeners, we're like, okay, evaluating our own meetings and when we walk in and start something, how our team is. So that's really helpful. And what I'd like to do is think about as we get into your method and how we can apply it, let's start at the beginning. What were you experiencing? What was that moment that made you start to build something like the Candy method in the first place?
Yes, my story begins definitely with my personal journey when I was experiencing what looks like an amazing life on the outside, especially on social media. And this was back when Facebook was much more around connecting with one another. So we're displaying our lives in that direction. And I was showing images of my vacation in Hawaii. And this was no ordinary vacation. This was 23 days across the 4 major islands with my husband of 15 years at that point, my young teenage daughter, and then my stepson who was growing it out of the house, but he was there with his girlfriend. We were all experiencing Hawaii for the very first time in our lives. And then Adrienne, I catch myself thinking, where is the feeling? because I was not feeling the moment. There wasn't happiness, there wasn't joy, there wasn't peace and calm, there wasn't even frustration or sadness or disappointment. There was literally no feeling moving through my body, which led me to
Mhm.
think, what is happening and who am I right now? And that became my
Right.
awakening to I don't know who I am. I have been a stay at home mom for all these years. My daughter, like I said, is a young teenager at this point. And while this was a chapter that I desired for so long in my heart and I was living it, I lost my presence with it. And if we're not present in what we're meant to be doing, we can get lost in that day to day. And then I stood there on that shore feeling like a woman covered in what I call dust. And yes, that's a play on dust particles where I was just a stay-at-home mom. I was just a stepmom. I was just a wife. I was just a daughter. And in that moment on that shore, I did not have an answer for that. And I thought, whoa,
Mhm.
I am definitely not happy with this. And I made a decision that day. Hey, there's a new year coming just a few days away, right around the corner. When I get home stateside, I am going on a quest for myself. I don't care how selfish it seems to anyone else. I'm going on a quest to figure out who is Lee and who is she meant to be in the world. And
Mhm.
through that self reflection, I already had years of personal development under my belt at this time in my life. And I took those skills, those concepts, and that self reflection went through to figure out who I am. And I chose a word to anchor my journey. And I chose the word laugh because I realized I've been in a depression and I've been in it for over 2 years. That's really not cool. So, how do I pull myself out of it? And I thought, well, let me use a word to carry me through. And I chose the word laugh. And then I also chose activities that would move me to laugh. And being diligent and intentional 30, 60, 90 days. I found my joy again. And interestingly, when it showed up in my heart center, it whispered in my ear, now that I'm here, what do you want to do with me? And out of that came my purpose because my little 8-year-old inner child came through and she said, remember how we love public speaking? Let's go doing that. And then in the process of thinking, oh, right, public speaking, this is something that I chased again and again and again, and then I would forget and I'd put it on the back burner because, like I said,
Right.
I was a stay-at-home mom at this point, and I thought, well, my daughter, she's getting ready to exit high school. She's going to be flying the proverbial nest and doing her thing. I'm going to be that empty nester. That's right. What do I do with this chapter now? And so I really dug deep into my personal development studies, looked at my own journey, put those pieces together, and that's how I formed the candy method, if you want to go into that next.
Right. Yeah, and that's, it's such a common issue, Lee. And so it's great to, to speak to it and be able to help other people when they face the same dilemma where you almost feel like you are a shell of who you could be, right? And you lose that humanity piece, right? Where somebody who's going through the
Yeah.
motions like a robot or, things like
Right.
that. And so you have to go, it's not uncommon that people have to go rediscover. I love you mentioned, your 8-year-old self, rediscover what brought you joy, what brings you your humanity, and for you, it was that laughing. I love that. Makes a huge, huge
Yeah.
difference. As someone with young kids in home, yeah, like laughter is a big part of who we are at the start, and it can definitely
Yes.
go by the wayside as life gets lifing, right?
Right.
So let's break down the candy method. Now, we got to start with how you came up with the name. Is it that you love candy? Is it that it was a good fit? Because I'm not a huge candy person, but my youngest most definitely is.
Yeah. Well, if I want to speak, what do I speak about? What is the message that I'm going to be taking out into the world? And I took a step back and I looked at, well, if I'm going to use my personal journey as an example, well, how did I move from that depression and really get myself out of it? Because I was on the brink, admittedly, for getting professional help. I wasn't sure if I could pull myself out of it, but fortunately I did. And then when I looked back at the steps in doing that, I thought, oh, well, isn't that interesting? Because number one, in asking me who is Lee, I was getting clear. I was bringing that clarity to who am I? What makes me happy? What makes me come alive? My favorite quote comes from Howard Thurman, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, then go do that. Because what the world needs is more people to come alive, right? We don't want
Right.
robots. We don't want, the people, breathing zombies. They're just waiting for the
Right.
graveyard day. It's like, no, let's not have that in the world. Let's have people who are alive and excited and happy doing what they love doing. And I thought, okay, well, I got clear on that for me. Let the dream come alive again. All right, fantastic. And then what else did I do? Well, I anchored myself with an affirmative word. I personally chose the word laugh, right? And I thought, okay, well, I used that as part of my journey so that that was my focus. If nothing else coming out of the depression, I had that one focus that I could use. And I thought, okay, I used affirmation. Wonderful. And I don't, the way that I teach affirmation, because so many people can say, well, I think positively, I use positive statements. It's not really working for me. And I'm like, and I know why, because you are using the now based on your past. And so your brain will question you. Well, who do you think you are to be saying that? That's not true. Or it's not really supporting you in that direction. Well, I take affirmation from the future successful self. When you can take that clarity, what makes you come alive and what the dream is, envision yourself into that future state where you have done all the things and you're living that life that you truly desire. How are you showing up then? Who is that person in the mirror you are looking at then? Borrow his or her belief and then bring that into the now. And that's what makes the affirmation so much more powerful and effective. And then I thought, okay, so I did that. And then I looked at myself, well, I'm a stay-at-home mom now, and I want to be this professional speaker. There is a gap that is in between those two spaces. Well, there's a necessary set of steps to move me from that transition, right? Well, as I see those steps, that becomes the roadmap or the blueprint. I got coaches and mentors to help guide me. How do I make this transition? How do I become successful? Success leaves clues. All right, so through books and mentors and coaching, I created that necessary step. And I'm like, all right. And then once I had that in place, it was, I know what to do. Am I actually doing it? And it was then looking at that I disciplined my thoughts when I woke up in the morning and what tone did I set for my day by the way that I spoke to myself. And then when I looked at my action plan, instead of sitting there in analysis paralysis and overthinking all of it or dealing with perfectionism or my fear of, oh, what will people think of me? It was no, discipline all those thoughts and feelings and the proper habits, like my morning routine, that then set you up for success or best success possible and go out and do the thing. And this is where I love to use, like Yoda says, there is no try, right? There is only do or do not. So we can have the clarity, the affirmation, and the necessity, but if we don't actually discipline ourselves to do the thing, nothing happens. So
Right.
that I was like, okay, I had to discipline myself that to create what I call my icebreakers. I'm doing something for the first time. I'm getting that first interview or I'm getting that first stage or that first room to speak to and share my story and message. And I thought, okay. And then the last part was being able to celebrate myself. I was high-fiving myself over my head or in the mirror before Mel Robbins made a book out of it and really taught the world that concept. And it was like, we do need that moment. And especially as leaders and executives, we're always going and we're doing, we're go-getters. We got the high drive, or we've got so much pressure that we don't get that moment of pause to go, wait a minute, what have I done? Where do I acknowledge my accomplishments? And even initially as that stay-at-home mom and I was overcoming that depression, I needed to celebrate that I got out of bed that day. I needed to celebrate that I took a shower a few days later. I needed to celebrate that I got myself out of the house. And now it's celebrating, well, where's the next place that I can show up and serve? And so when I looked back at those pieces, right, pun intended, Adrian, it's like, okay, I had the clarity, the affirmation, the necessity, the discipline, and you. And it wasn't that like, oh, I love candy so much. It was, I looked at the steps and I thought, these fall into work. That forms candy. Well, isn't that exciting? And I thought, okay, I guess what I have put together is the candy method, and it's healthy candy. So it's not going to
Right.
put more weight on you, right? Or it's not going to have a bad side effect later. It's going to give you the best results possible. And I really dial it in to that self-talk because as a self-leadership strategist, I believe that leadership begins with you. And then it comes down to what is the self-talk? And I like to position it as Is the inner critic the one who's telling you you're not good enough, or who do you think you are? You're not ready. And is it the inner critic that is running as the CEO of the boardroom of your mind, or is it really from your heart center, your authentic self, where you say, "Wait, I may not know everything, but I know enough, or I am resourceful enough to take on this role and give it the best version of myself." And that's where we really step into that candy method and celebrate you so that you are shining into the person that you are meant to be.
Love that, and I love that helpfulness of it. I would love to walk through a specific application of it with some of the one of the situations I see a lot with Workergenics. I interact with a lot of leaders, a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners. They know they need to bring on help. They know they need to let go of control of some tasks in order for their business to grow, right? They need somebody else who's going to do their low, let's say the operations, right? The stuff that gets things done,
Yeah.
but they worry that other people can't do it as well as they can. They don't know how to hand it off and they worry things are going to fall apart. How do you
Yeah.
help them get there where they can move from like kind of like being self employed because they're really just doing it all themselves? They just bought themselves their own job, right? By starting their own business
Right.
to being a business owner where they've got a team that's helping do the work and they can really grow and scale.
Yes, absolutely. Because I'm so passionate about the self talk, again, I start with that self position and I put together this framework for that mindset so that we get them in the right mindset and then I can talk them through the rest of the steps. So I have a visual here that I'm going to share with you for this concept. And it's a set of Scrabble letters for those who are listening in. And the letters form the word reactor. And the reactor is the person who is just that. Like me as the mom on the shore that day, I was reacting to how I perceived my life as a stay at home mom. And I was reacting to the never ending cycles. As a business owner, we can be reacting to the emails, the texts, the meetings, the networking, the to do list that again never ends while we're seeing ourselves pursuing. I'm hustling, I'm grinding, I'm doing the things and yet we really are reacting to all the situations and we feel like we're putting out fire after fire after fire. And like the letter C in the middle of reactor, we see ourselves stuck, stressed, overwhelmed in the middle of all the things. And what I do through my work is say, well, let's take yourself out. So I'm taking the letter C out from the middle of reactor and pointing that out for you to see yourself for who you really are. That day on the shore, I didn't know who I was and I really had to get in touch with that. Are you in touch with who you are and seeing yourself for what I call the 3 Gs, that you have genius, you have gifts, and you have greatness to offer the world. And it's that combination that makes you nobody else. And this is where you start thinking, well, that's the point, Wayne. Nobody else is me, so they can't do it as good as me. Well, first, let's see you for your brilliance and then put yourself first. And when we do that, now putting the C in front of the rest of the letters, it becomes creator because it's showing that once you see yourself first, and this is not a selfish thing, but in putting yourself first, knowing what lights you up, what you get excited about, what your 3 Gs are, everything else aligns incongruent with who you are, what your intentions are. There is no single person who can do it all, right? And maybe we're building a business for ourselves, but we're not doing it by ourselves. So instead of reacting to everything that's going on in your business, where are you creating the best version of yourself? And then what is the vision that you have for your particular business? And then looking at yourself again with your 3 Gs, what is your zone of genius? The things that you are really good at and that you truly love doing. You can't wait to get on. It takes you no hesitation at all. Like it's like, okay, it's time to get this done. In you go, and you're having fun doing it. And then what are the things that maybe need to be done? You know how to do them, but it's not something that lights you up. What happens then? You kind of delay, you put it off, procrastination shows up, but maybe that's the thing that, yeah, you know how to do it and you're pretty good at it, but it can be either delayed or it's something that can be delegated off to someone else. And then you get to train them on what's your expectation. And friends, here's the truth. Yeah, no one's going to do it exactly how you would do it or the way that you would do it. If you can stay open and curious to letting them be about 80%, trust me, 80% of how you would do it, that is 100% success. And then, if the personalities match, the working styles match, where you're okay with having them in the same, whether it's the same office space or the same building space or same Zoom space, whatever that happens to be. And you've got those people skills where you're connecting with one another and you have the communication back and forth on getting those things done. Trust me, taking that off of your plate so you can now focus that energy and bandwidth on the things that you love doing, you're going to grow. Lean into that. You focus on that, and you've got this beautiful, wonderful, amazing, brilliant team member, even if it's just one, who can help you with those other things. And trust me, you'll feel that even if they're, 80% matched up to the way that you would do it, and then they may even show you a different perspective of how they do it and operate, and you're like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Because when we get so in our business, we get these blinders on, and we do have blind spots, and we can't see that, but maybe that's the strength of someone else. So be open to that. Taking a look back at yourself. Am I being a reactor and living in reactor mode and seeing things this way, and just see myself stuck in the middle of it? Or can I see myself first, create that best version of myself, and then create the best opportunity for someone to assist me? And now we're creating an even better version of my company and my life.
If you're running a growing company and still handling too many operational details yourself, there's a better way forward. The Delegate or Die checklist shows you the exact tasks that drain leadership bandwidth and the simple changes that recover 15 to 30 plus hours a week. Download it free at workergenics.com/scale-smart. Now let's get back to the episode.
Right. And I will say, I have seen so often when I hand off something that my team does it better than I would do it. And that's just wonderful, because if you're really handing off something that isn't your zone of genius, that brings your energy down, then odds are there is somebody where it is their gifting and they'll do it better than you do. So I love how you pointed that out.
Exactly. Yes.
Now let's talk about the D in Candy a little bit. When I think of the discipline, I think of routine habits that we want to do, maybe like we want the discipline to do something every day or something like that. What are some daily or weekly habits, routines that with the discipline in Candy, you see people often implement that make a big difference?
Yes. When we think of productivity, a lot of times we are thinking of time management, and I focus in on energy management. When and where is your best energy coming from? The days for me personally that I don't do my morning routine, if I'm waking up at the last minute and I'm just diving in, my best work does not come out of that. But when I'm like, oh, my morning routine, when I wake up in the morning, making sure I'm mindful of disciplining those thoughts, and then how am I getting out of bed? And what are the thoughts as I'm getting into the shower, speaking to myself during that time, and then putting myself together and prepping, doing all of that, that is part of the energy management. And if we're not mindful of that, and it doesn't mean we need to be mindful of every second of every day, that's 86,000 seconds. And we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts passing through us. We don't have the control of all of that. But when we can look at, first of all, who needs me to show up? And that allows us to just release the ego. So who needs me to show up? Am I showing up for my team today? Am I showing up for my customers today? Am I showing up for an audience today? Taking a look at that, then who do they need me to be? How do I want to be perceived when I'm showing up for those people? What is that best version of me? Okay, great. Then how is she or he carrying himself? And so how does that come together? And then looking at the to-do list. And typically, my to-do list comes the night before. I focus a lot, and I'm thinking I probably need to write a book about this, that the evening routine, there's so much discussion on the morning routine. I'm like, oh, well, what if we focus on the evening routine? Because that allows me to look at what does my day look like for tomorrow? And then what are the three most important tasks that need to be top priority for me? And I already have that set. So as I'm going to bed, my brain is not thinking, oh, what are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do tomorrow? And now I'm messing with my sleep. It's like, okay, brain, we know what's going on. So let's go get the rest so we can show up excited and enthusiastic about that. Okay. And then moving into that energy. And so the discipline comes from that evening routine or bedtime routine, putting ourselves together and in thinking something wonderful is going to happen for me tomorrow, getting that peaceful rest. And when I wake up in the morning, again, waking up, my gosh, I have another day. I get to show up and serve. And I'm thinking about those people that I get to show up and serve for, even though I can't see them. I can't see our audience right here and right now, but I know I'm showing up for them. And then thinking, okay, what is that best version of me that I'm creating today? And doing that and showing up for them. And it's disciplining that roadmap, the journey, the game plan, and how do we set into that to bring that best version of ourselves and thinking, okay, where's my best energy going to come from? And making sure that we have those moments as well to step away, take a break, whether it's having a cup of coffee or can you step outside and do just a quick 5 or 10 minute brisk walk to get that fresh air, get some vitamin D if you can in your area, and get that moment where you're stepping away from your environment to again see yourself for who you really are. Have that moment of refresher, come back in, and that energy is reset because it is very much a limited resource, right? That's why we have products like Red Bull and energy drinks, Monster and whatnot. We don't want to be depending on that. We can regenerate ourselves, but if all we're doing is going in and grinding and we're not really paying attention to that and giving ourselves that moment of pause, it's just a 5 minute reset that if you can do that every 90 minutes at the very least, you're going to come back in, feel that energy, you're able to reset, you're able to refocus and dial yourself in. And as you're doing that in a disciplined way, you will see that your results will change and improve.
I love that. So you're pointing out the importance of having some daily discipline around our energy, right? Building and maintaining it. And you speak about the morning, like the morning routine. One of the things I was reminded of is I don't know if you are familiar with the like Hindu or the with the Hindu idea of quiet mornings.
I'm familiar with Quiet Mind. There's a book that probably revolves around that concept. And so many of us I have been guilty of this, of the alarm goes off, I'm grabbing the phone, right? And it's like, "Oh, wait a minute, instead of grabbing the phone, I say, grab your heart. And it's
Right.
breathing in that moment of gratitude of, "Oh, I am waking up to another day." And doing that with gratitude instead of, "Oh, I'm waking up to another day." Because do you know how many people don't get to? It's such a
hmm
blessing. It's such a privilege that you're getting to wake up to another day. Can you grab your heart and like, thank you. I'm still here and I get to. So instead of focusing on, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, let's flip that language. I do so much of reframing language. Let's flip that instead of, I have to do this into, I get to do this. And that's another clue. If you're not finding yourself enthusiastically saying, I get to that, and you're finding more of the I have to, how much of that have to can you delegate off to one else? Because you're not waking up with that excitement. And then it's clearly not a zone of genius for you when you're like, oh, I have to. It's like, flip that. Let that be a clue. It's like, oh, okay, that's where I can create a different version. Just put the have to, delegate the have to on someone else. Again, who can do it, at least 80% as well as you would, or a little differently that makes it even better. And then again, you dial in to what you get to do. And so that morning essence is so important because when you wake up with I have to, or oh, it's another day, or oh, here we are, the alarm just went off. What kind of tone is that setting for the day? What does that do? That's already bringing your energy down to that lower level and it feels heavy. When you're waking up with that excitement and enthusiasm, and I know it sounds silly, it's like, hey, it's just the alarm and me getting into the shower. No, it's not just. It's
hmm
a meaningful day. You get to bring the meaning to that. So let's make it meaningful with I get to and that that place of gratitude. And so don't hit the snooze button, right? That's disrupting our sleep pattern to the point where our brains can respond in a way that is very similar pattern to being drunk. And who wants to start the day that way? Let's not do that. If you wake up to an alarm, turn off the snooze, open those eyes, grab your heart with gratitude. Okay, it's another day. What am I grateful for? Whether it's just one thing. If you can come up with five, guess what? You are already putting yourself in a place of 25% increased happiness. Who doesn't want to wake up with more happiness in their day? But even if it's just one thing that you come up with, and challenge yourself to make it different every day. So maybe it's the blankets on your bed. Maybe it's the roof over your head, looking outside and like, hey, the sun is out today. I'm grateful for the sun. If you get to wake up to someone next to you is important to you. It's like, oh, I get to wake up another day next to my favorite person. I hope that's the case. And if you got fur babies, it's like, oh, I have another day, with Charlie here. How fun. Whatever it happens to be. Or I get to wake up and work with my team because I hope that you were excited about the team that you do work with. And what does
Right.
that look like? It really makes a huge difference. So yeah, there's that quietness because even grabbing your phone, even if you're not hearing anything through the emails and the text, you're like, it's not projecting sound. No, it's still making noise in the brain that needs to be focused on you. It needs to be focused on that stillness because sometimes your next genius idea is going to come out either in a whisper or out of that silence with inspiration. And so, yeah, those quiet moments first thing in the morning, absolutely essential.
I actually did a week-long retreat where it was silent until 9 a.m., like all through breakfast, as well as like no digital devices until 9 a.m. And yeah, there's a lot of value that comes out from that silence in the morning and not letting all those other inputs kind of be static in your world. But
Yes.
Lee, I appreciate everything you shared here. If people would like to connect with you and learn more about your work or check out your candy method, where should they go?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Adrian, for this conversation. I love talking about these different things. If you can't tell, it's like, yes, it lights me up. It gets me energized. I love sharing about it. And I am so passionate about helping people rewrite their self-talk that I pretty much got the URLs, knowing that we have the negative chatter and I'm wanting to empowering you with getting in touch with creating that best version of yourself, including your self-talk. I put together a reframe and there's the touch points on the candy method in that PDF. And then there's a single page there that says there's two columns. On the left-hand side, it's don't say that, which is typically that negative chatter. On the right-hand side, I give you the reframe. Say this. Thank you so much, Adrian.
Thank you, Lee. And for our listeners, Lee really gets at how you can build yourself as a leader and your team to be energized and aligned. This inner shift she talks about can really change everything downstream, right? Because it all starts with how you're thinking in the first place. And there's an element that applies to execution too, right? You can have the right strategy and the right people, but if follow through keeps slipping through the cracks, none of it lands, and things can fall apart, you may need some help on the ground to execute. And so you can be in that creator seat. And that's what we do here at Workergenics with Ultimate Executive Assistants. We keep the day moving so that you can be doing your most exciting, aligned work. If that sounds like something your operation could use, check us out at workergenics.com. Thanks for listening and catch me again next week for another episode.